All right, I think everyone, I see no more line for drinks, so we'll go ahead and we'll start. This is the last bit of perfunctory speechifying that I've been asked to do. I'm not really sure why we have a slide deck at the end of the day, other than the fact that someone told me, well, you can't just send people up to the reception. So I'm going to try to say some things that hopefully give you an idea of some of the cool stuff. I love the fact that we were at a legal tech and innovation conference, and I think we got all the way into the afternoon before I even heard the initials, GPT. That being said, now we're going to get it all in all at the last minute, because I'm going to talk about AI and the lab. So some of you who know our work at the lab know that we've been doing AI work at the lab for a long time now. But we like to take a very thoughtful approach to it. And I've had a long time trying to figure out what exactly is my hot take on all this AI stuff. And so I've determined that I'm a sort of situational contrarian, which is to say that if you're going to tell me that AI is the best thing since sliced bread and it's going to change the world and it's going to do this, I'm going to try to harsh your mellow. I'm going to try to derail the AI hype train. And I'm going to say, oh, but there are all these harms that can be caused. I'm going to be Ian Malcolm. And I'm going to say, you were so preoccupied with whether or not you could, you didn't think about whether or not you should. That being said, I do not think we are about to enter a brave new world of sentient robots who are going to replace people. I think there is a nearer term, much scarier future, which I love the fact that there is this public domain image someone made of what, to me, I imagine is like a middle-level bureaucrat in Minority Report. And so there are real dangers with some of these technologies, and I want to ask sort of how we can use them and how we can use them for good, and can we make them, more lovable? I did realize after picking this slide that Wally and Eve, of course, are the good characters because humans have entirely let the Earth go to crap. But nonetheless, they're doing good pro-social things. So how should we think about all this stuff in the news, this GPT, AI in general? What does that all even mean? And of course, there's the old saw that AI is everything's AI until you understand how it works, and then it's just normal software. So what is this new moment of AI we're going into? What really is this GTP stuff? And I kept coming back to that scene from Don't Look Up, where Dr. Mindy's getting on the train and the other doctor's saying to him, keep it simple, no math. And then Dr. Mindy's like, but it's all math. And then the door closes, and it's just a beautiful scene. I'm actually going to take that advice. I was going to show math, but I was going to do math as I usually do, but I tried that in another venue earlier this week. It didn't go so well. So let's boil it down. What is this GPT thing? What is it? Well, the phrase I've most come to like about it all is that it's spicy autocomplete. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar, although I think in this audience we probably are, with ChatGPT and all these other large language models that are sort of sweeping the world, I just heard a conversation about Italy's blocking of ChatGPT, all sorts of fun things. And what's going on here? Those tools are basically, they're tools that were trained to help predict the next word in a sentence. Now, some people I hear say, but that's not giving it, not giving its due. I asked it to do this complicated thing, and then did this, and then that. And I'm not arguing that they can't do amazing things, that they won't be transformative, but they are just spicy autocomplete. And so I want to be really careful about attributing any sort of human characteristics to them, because I think that opens us up to all sorts of problems. And I think we're all familiar with one of these problems, which is that when you ask these models some factual something, well, they tend to BS a lot. There's my little robotic bullshit. Again, you know that I don't curse, so I'm so excited that this is a technical term of art that I get to use, because there is sort of this philosophical understanding of BS. I really just only got the one in me. There's this philosophical understanding of BS as a process of speech that does not concern itself with the accuracy of what you're saying, but only sort of the aesthetic value. And that's really what you get with these models, because they were created to produce something that sounds plausible, but there's really no tying or accounting for accuracy. Now, that being said, there might be things that we could do to make them more accurate, and there might be ways that we could sort of tame these models. For that, though, we need an origin story. So Quentin was able to walk you through our work in the lab at the beginning of the pandemic and the assembly line process. And that really provided a wonderful opportunity for us in the lab to do some really important things. I mean, we had a situation where the court's doors were physically closed. People couldn't go into the courts. And so we built some tools that allowed people to access the courts. And the great thing is I don't have to explain all that to you because you heard about that earlier and got to build some of those tools earlier today. One of the things that came out of that experience, though, was we really felt like we had captured lightning in a bottle. By the way, this image, do you know where I got this image? I had a computer make this image. It was so much fun. Okay. Oh man, the things we could talk about. So we sort of captured lightning in a bottle. We were able to do this, this wonderful thing for the people of the Commonwealth. We served tens of thousands of individuals. We sort of were talking about earlier today about the impact of these things. And, there was a situation, actually, Mia's form that she made, we heard from the appeals court that what ended up happening was someone went into the housing court. They got an eviction order. They were going to be evicted. They go back to their home. The constable's there. They're moving the property out of the house. The person goes online, accesses our tool, using the form Mia made, and files for a stay of the eviction. The judge sees it and grants the stay. They have to stop the eviction, the physical eviction in process, return the property to the home. Now that's something that in theory could have happened before our tool. Someone could have called the appeals court, but I have a hard time seeing how that actually would have happened before that tool. So there's real power here. And we wanted to figure out how do we capture this lightning in a bottle so that we can actually do this. And this is what Quentin was talking about earlier today. Our sort of cheat code, our secret was that we had those hundreds of volunteers across 11 time zones and 5 continents. And so it was really everyone coming together to pitch in. And as people went back to their jobs and away from their computers and we lost that volunteer core, the question is, what do we do next? How do we keep up with that assembly line? Pause for laughter. And so the answer was that we would move and we'd augment that assembly line to add more automation into it. And those are the tools we saw, some of the tools we saw earlier today. And we've had a lot of fun building tools. And we think that's been great because it's allowed us to sort of think about some of the problems in some interesting ways. And as we alluded to, what that meant was we were able to go and scan we scanned 47 jurisdictions, court forms, the publicly available PDF forms. I can put so many qualifiers on it, it won't sound very impressive. So I'll just leave it at 24,000 court forms. And so we got those from all over the US. And the thing is, then we now know some stuff about these forms. So that's kind of cool. We have all this information. So finally, we're going to be able to realize the promise of big data in the law. I wait twice for the laugh there because there are 3 slides that are guaranteed to be in every one of my slide decks. And well, it's like a scavenger hunt now, so wait for the other ones. You know what's coming. It's the George Box thing. Okay, so what can we do now that we have all this data on these court forms? Well, one, it means that we can actually build tools to help people find things in that data. And on the Form Explorer website that Quentin showed you earlier, we actually have a tool that allows you to sort of semantically search the forms, to sort of search for forms that are similar based upon their content, not just keywords. And then as we saw, look at the form and then compare those forms across some of those metrics. So you can say, these 3 forms I chose, here they are compared to each other. And so this starts to get to the point where we can start to know about the distribution of forms that are out there in the world. And we can start to ask ourselves, well, what can we learn from those forms? And are there any insights? Is there any cool math we could do with the stuff from that form and figure some cool stuff out? You know what? I want to build a nice statistical model. Okay, here's the other slide that everyone always sees. This is a quote from the statistician George Box. It says, all models are wrong, but some models are useful. And this is a statement about not confusing the map for the territory. Right, so we're going to build some tools, and we talked a little bit about things going wrong and failure states earlier today. And so, what if the machine gives you this bad answer? What if we automate bad forms. And the thing I want to sort of ask us all to think about is, let's remember that these tools we're building, they're based on models, they're giving us suggestions. They're not going to be right, but they might be useful. So to figure out if they are, we've got to say, well, we know they're wrong. A model's output then should start, not end the discussion. And so that comes exactly to Daniel's point earlier today about Quentin's presentation. Let's see how many interreferential bits I can get. It's like Inception. Wow. Oh. So you get to the point where it's like, here's something that a human can take over. Let's use that to start the discussion. And then we can deal with the fact that it's not perfect, because we can move forward from there. Because what we really have to do to ask whether or not it's useful is say, compared to what? So if you're dealing with a blank page problem and you have nothing to start with, then getting something is really a great way to start. I love this notion of, write quick, edit slow. Right? So you put down some crap and then you go back and you edit, and that's how you get to the good stuff. And if these tools can help us get that first draft, that's great. I think people also tend to forget, and I know this, that because people have actually studied, that when people try to think about improving things, we often think about what can we add to the situation. We very rarely stop to think about what can we subtract. And so the skill of editing and taking something that might be, a block of marble and turning it into Michelangelo's David is a exercise in subtraction. So even if these tools aren't giving us the perfect, they might help us get to the better. So here's some of the forms. What's the tool that we're gonna use here that we talked about? Well, here's a very simple, I think it's a name change form and our complaint for protection. So an abuse prevention order form here in Massachusetts. And so we now have a tool at a namespace, which I have to thank Quentin for, because he was like, wait a second, can we call it Rate My PDF? That URL is available. And I'm like, buy it now. And that's on the card. So Sarah, you'll hear about that. She already knows, but it was funnier if I made it seem like she didn't. And so at ratemypdf.com, you can now take those forms and you can get these model outputs. And they'll tell you things about the reading level. They'll tell you things about how many sentences there are, whether or not there's things like passive voice. And what this does is this allows us to now not just do that on a form by form basis, but to point it at those 24,000 forms. And we can start to see the distribution. We can start to see, in this state, the reading level tends to be at like 10th grade. In this state, it tends to be 13th grade. Something's wrong there. And don't get me started on reading level, because these metrics weren't designed for forms, and so there are all sorts of caveats and issues there, but I'm going to try not to speak with too many footnotes today. The point is that we now have the ability, we've sort of scored a lot of these forms, so we've graded the exams, we just need to figure out the curve. And so once we figure out what that curve is, we'll have to be able to give some actionable items to say, if this is the thing you're doing, then here are some things you might want to do. But what we're really excited about are using these tools to be able to move towards having a really good navigator, a really good robotic navigator. And here's the robot that we all really want to be working with. And so what we've done is as we alluded to earlier today, we've been playing around with that on the Find My Site tool. And the fun thing, if you go back to that tool from earlier in the day, you'll realize if you just go to the URL, it sort of lands on that robot BS page and has all sorts of wonderful disclaimers and talk and links. And there you go, those are all my footnotes. You can look at those. But we're using this as a sandbox, as a place to play around. And so here is an example from plainlanguage.gov of a sort of maybe inelegantly or overly complicated worded construction. We can feed that into these tools and we can say, take that and use a 6th grade reading level, rewrite the above to make more concise, clear, and comprehensible to a general audience. And I'll just point out that, here we're using a different, we're using the sort of guess feature over there as opposed to the ask or suggest. So actually, if you want to go back to Find My Site and play around with the different tools, you'll find they have different, they're tuned for different performances. But if we do that and we ask it to go ahead and give us something, it actually gives us a not bad first pass. It's something we could go in and we could work with as a person to rewrite better. And of course, it's not deterministic. So if we ask it again, it'll give a different answer. It's still a pretty good answer. So those are some of the tools we have. Find My Site, ratemypdf.com, stuff, and then you can find more of the Form Explorer there But what I want to sort of leave with is the notion that this is not new to us here at the lab, this idea of using AI to deliver access to justice. One of the things I would like to point out is that the approach you just heard about, for the most part, was hopefully not with too much whiz-bang. It was, how can we use these tools to give us little signals to do something that's going to make an impact when we add everything together? But I want to talk a little bit about Spot, C-Spot Run. So Spot was our machine learning, is our machine learning issue spotting tool. It's available over an API. Many of you know about Spot. You basically give it a bit of natural language and it'll say, we think these 5 legal issues might be present. And developers can use that to do all sorts of things like automating resource finders online. It's been trained on over 1 million label pairs. It's been queried over 500,000 times. It's one of these little projects that just sort of sits there and runs, and like, I know it's helping people. It's just doing this all. It's this weird, there's like this AI thing out there that's saying, here are 5 issues that might be helpful, and it's helping people. And it's free to nonprofits and government folks. And the reason I bring it up is because the last time we were all here in person, I had like this really cryptically like named event right after lunch. It was like secret fun thing. And this is a slide from it. And what it was is it was a slide, this was back in 2019. And we're like, we're gonna have Spot. And right then we were developing it and we're gonna use it to help people find resources. And this is a thing that's gonna happen in the future. And it's happened. So I'm very excited about our ability to move forward and do new things. And so what I want to do is just make sure that everyone stops for a moment to think about what is it, especially sort of in the context of as legal professionals or at a law school, we have to offer in this space. You've seen a lot of stuff where we've built tools. Hopefully it didn't feel like we were talking about just building the tools because what we're trying to do here is prepare our students not to be production coders, not to go out in the world and start the next big company or digital service, but rather to be parts of interdisciplinary teams that are going to be able to create those services and also be able to identify when their clients are being affected by technology and how to adapt and provide what their clients need as they go out into the world and do their practice. So one of the things we've done, and one of the things that's becoming very clear is needed more and more as we start to think about these generative AI tools and the questions of how do we make sure that they are used for good and not ill, is we've also looked at interesting models for confining their use in a constructive way. So a lot of you might be familiar with some of the generative models like Stable Diffusion, which is what I used to produce the picture earlier on the slide. They use a license called Rail, which is a responsible, or I can't remember the initials. But the point is, it's a licensing term that attempts to be an attempt to say, hey, you can use this software, but only if you use it in these pro-social ways. The problem is that's just a license agreement. And there are some big questions as to how much teeth they have. And there are some big questions philosophically as to whether or not those sort of license agreements are even something that are a good idea. We've actually, with Spot, implemented a trust model where we use trust law to make our developers trustees and the output of the model as the trust property. And you know who their beneficiaries are? They're end users. So they actually then have a duty that is enforceable in court where a judge has the ability to use equitable remedies to make sure that they use things for the benefit of their community. We didn't do that because we think it's a good idea, but we do, but because it was the way to make the model better. Spot improves itself. A lot of these models improve themselves by the training data they're given. A lot of times that training data is just the data of people using it. And we wanted to be able to go to a nonprofit or to a legal aid and say, hey, use this tool and share the data back with us. And you can feel safe that you're doing that in a way that is consistent with not only your values, but your ethical obligations, such that that data is going to be used for the benefit of your clients and not turned around and used to identify people in financial distress and target them for predatory lending. So really, again, I don't know why we have a slide talk at the end of the day, other than it was an excuse to get you up here to get you some drinks. And so I want to invite you to, think big. And, I really want to think about a world where there aren't any court forms, because I want to think about a world where it's a workflow, where we think about what is it we're trying to do, where we go to, as was so elegantly said earlier today, we figure out what is the thing we want, what is the why, and we don't find ourselves stuck within, the shadow on the cave of the form, and we can get to the platonic ideal of, oh, by golly, it sounds like I've already had 3 drinks. Go, talk to each other, have fun. Thank you all for being here. It's been so great. I'm going to come around and see you all, and no, I'm not going to see you all. I have to go home and talk to my kids, but thank you all for being here. Thank you. That's really it. Now go talk to each other, drink, have some food. Thank you all.